Hello learners, we are back again today to continue our study of Cry the Peacock, a novel by Anita Desai. We will now attempt a critical appreciation of the novel. We begin with exploring the novel as psychological fiction. Anita Desai has added a new dimension to Indian English fiction, the exploration of the human mind. She is endowed with great psychological insight and often peeps into the inner recesses of the psyche. Rather than merely presenting the outer spectacle of the world, Cry the Peacock is described as a trendsetter in the field of psychoanalytical realism. It explores the inner world of the protagonist, Maya, and demonstrates her fear, insecurity, and extremely strange behavior. Through her, she depicts a world of alienation, loneliness, and suffering. Maya is described as a hysterical character whose impending tragedy is suggestively foreshadowed time and again. The novel portrays the psyche of a woman on the verge of insanity and the factors responsible for that. The novel opens with the death of Maya's pet dog, Toto. In her state of agony and depression, she is reminded of the albino astrologer's prediction that in the 4th year of her marriage, there will be death, either hers or her husband's. To free herself from the burden, Maya recedes to the past and fantasizes about her childhood days. Maya always clings to fantasy, as she is unable to relate herself to reality. Her relationship to reality passes through 3 different stages: her childhood, marital life, and finally the stage when she totally surrenders herself to the world of insanity. Maya is seen as a neurotic, introverted, love-famished character, a victim of the inadequacy of human relationships. Maya's claustrophobia, loneliness, and frustration are effectively brought out by Anita Desai. Maya is a hypersensitive young woman, pursued and haunted by the idea of early death, prophesied by the albino astrologer, and her ineffectual lonely struggle against fate. It is these that drive her to murder, insanity, and finally, perhaps, to suicide. The struggle between social constraints and psychological insight appears to be greatly hyperbolized in the novel, and therefore the smooth progression of ideas is hampered. It becomes immensely depressing. In spite of an exaggerated depiction of Maya's misery, Desai's work is a good manifestation of human sentiment. She has deftly deconstructed the euphoric view of marriage as a blissful institution by pointing towards its terrifying strains of hopelessness. The major themes in Cry the Peacock are marital disharmony, loss of identity, escapism, a growing sense of the meaninglessness and purposelessness of life. As Desai herself says, writing to me is a process of discovering the truth that is 9/10 of the iceberg that lies submerged beneath the 1/10 visible portion we call reality. Writing is my way of plunging into the depths and exploring this underlying truth. All my writing is an effort to discover, to underline and convey the true significance of things. The novel presents three different attitudes towards fate and superstition. Maya's attitude towards fate contrasts with Gautama's. She believes that her fate is sealed. She lives a life of horror and fear at the prospect of the prophecy being fulfilled. Gautama, on the other hand, does not believe in fate at all. He is of the view that an educated person should not believe in such superstitions. Pom, a friend of Maya, is antithetical to her in character. There is no room for fate or tradition or superstition in her life, except when it suits her. She is cheerful and accepts beliefs that are sources of joy to her. She ignores the rest. Some critics are of opinion that Maya's superstitious beliefs originate in her suppressed hostility and cruel impulses. While she appears submissive and obedient as a daughter, sister, and wife, the fact remains that there is immense hostility suppressed in her unconscious against her husband and, interestingly, perhaps to some extent, against her father as well. The contrast between her external circumstances as perceived by the society and her inner world forms another interesting facet. She appears like someone who should be content with her life because she has everything that a woman could ask for: a secure home, a husband who earns well. However, she sees her life as an endless tedium with nothing significant happening at any time. She is never the center of importance, and that is what she craves. Neither is she instrumental in any event. Childlessness adds yet another dimension to the novel. The birth of a child may have given Maya a sense of achievement, and her creative urge could have been focused on a baby instead of being diffused over nature and spread outside human interest. Alienation is another major theme of the novel. It refers to an estrangement that occurs in the relation between an individual and that to which he or she is relating to. It is a feeling of not belonging. This feeling can be physical, mental, religious, spiritual, political, or economical. Maya feels totally alienated from her husband, Gautama, and from her surroundings, and even from herself. She wants to be attached to the world and its abounding charms, while Gautama wants to remain aloof and detached. He wants to attain peace of mind. This difference in attitudes alienates them from each other totally. This incompatibility causes deep alienation in Maya's mind, and she becomes intensely abnormal. K.R. Srinivas Iyengar writes, her intensity, whether she is sane, hysterical or insane, fills the whole book and gives it form as well as life. Anita Desai explores the psychic depth of her characters and analyzes their motives in detail. Maya is the daughter of a rich advocate in Lucknow. Her mother being dead and brother having gone to America to carve his own independent destiny, she gets the most of her father's affection and attention. And in her moments of affliction, she exclaims to herself, "No one else loves me as my father does." Maya longs for similar attention from her husband Gautama, a father surrogate. But he is too engrossed in his work and fails to meet her demands. She feels neglected and miserable. Although the reason for Maya's neurosis may not be her father fixation, it hastens her tragedy. Maya is a creature of instincts. Like a wayward and high-strung child, as symbolized by her name, she stands for the world of sensations. Gautama's name, on the other hand, symbolizes asceticism. He is realistic and rational. He has a philosophical detachment towards life. Such irreconcilably different temperaments are bound to lead to marital disharmony. And that is what we see happening here. Maya suffers from headaches and experiences rages of rebellion and terror as she moves towards insanity. An idea hopefully dawns in her mind that since the albino had predicted death to either of them, it may be Gautama and not she whose life is threatened. She thus transfers her death wish to Gautama and thinks that as he is detached and indifferent to life, it will not matter to him if he misses life. Maya's transition from neurosis to psychosis is powerfully underscored in the scene of the dust storm, in which she is shown as running on and on from room to room, laughing as maniacs laugh once the world gives them up and surrenders them to their freedom. Maya's shutting herself in as a measure of protection from the raging dust storm is symbolic of her total withdrawal from the world of purposeful action and meaningful relationships. The exact point of her plunging into the abysmal depths of psychosis is her final act of violence. Maya pushing Gautama off the terrace over the parapet of their house is not fortuitous. Having done the deed, she declares, "It had to be one of us, you see, and it was so clear it was I who was meant to live. You see, to Gautama it didn't really matter. He didn't care and I did." in Maya's brief encounter with life after she causes her husband's death, she becomes aware of the situation she has created. However, she dies not to expiate her sin, but because she has no hope for life after her last support had gone. Her death in the end is not a redemption from pain, but only a futile attempt to shift an otherwise intolerable burden of existence from one level to another. Desai uses the technique of contrast between various settings, situations, characters, and even between different stages of the life of the same character. This novel does not seem transparent or predictable, even if the ending does not come as a surprise. She does not use the traditional plot structure with linear movement in terms of exposition, conflict, and resolution. She creates people within the existential framework with dreams and wills. Here it is Maya who, with help from other characters, creates the story and the action. There is an unusual attraction in the narrative technique used by Desai because it combines the realistic and the romantic. There is no crime, no passion, no mystery. Mystery comes into the story through another door. It makes the story more complex. For Maya certainly did not murder her husband because she hated him. Though theirs was not a marriage built on love, she did love him in a certain way. Her confessional in the second part of the novel proves it. Do not presume. No one must presume that our marriage was an empty one, a failure. Not that Gautama was no more than a figure of granite to me, a mound of books that smelt faintly of moldy rice and wisdom, for he was more, so much more. This kind of conjugal relationship is the outcome of patriarchal culture and is very common. The killing of her husband by Maya is the worst anathema in this culture. In Desai's hands, imagery becomes a very powerful mode to create the storyline of her novel. Her symbols acquire significance because there is an appropriate correlation between the object and the symbolic meaning. In the story, the events are arranged in a sequence which can differ from the chronological sequence. The locations where events occur are also given distinct characteristics and are thus transformed into symbols. Desai uses the stream of consciousness technique along with the first and third person narratives. She effectively juxtaposes the present and the past to highlight the temperamental incompatibility between Maya and Gautama. Desai's books have been called essentially tragic, but she views the world as comic as well. Not one without the other, certainly, for they have to be together, she says. This paradoxical view is perhaps what creates tension and power permeating her prose. The city in Cry the Peacock is best represented by the minor characters such as Mrs. Lal, the prim lady at the party, the Sikh, the cabaret dancers, Gautama's mother and his sister Neela. The protagonist Maya is presented by the novelist as a victim because she remains in constant tension between the vain glory of the city and her tendency or desire to recreate her childhood world of innocence, beauty and purity. The city plays a crucial role in the marital life of Maya and Gautama because it widens the gap between the two of them. Gautama is a busy lawyer who does not want to be interrupted by such trivial matters as the death of a pet dog. Maya feels the absence of Gautama in the house for long hours, and whenever he comes, he gets busy with clients. Maya feels rejected and utterly lonely in the house. His coldness and incessant talk of cups of tea and philosophy in order not to hear me talk and talking reveal myself. It is that, my loneliness in this house. Desai's novels embody a realistic view of the city, but at the same time, she presents it as a metaphor of existence. The city becomes a symbol that reflects the existential dilemma of the tormented souls who are in constant quest of selfhood. The characters constantly feel the pressure of the city, which provides a sense of vacuum. At the same time, this urban atmosphere intensifies the sense of despair and alienation in the individual. The novel reveals Desai's unique worldview, but at the same time, it also reveals the existing tendencies in modern fiction. Cry the Peacock is a technical innovation early in her writing career, and it combines the features of both a novel and lyrical poetry, and that makes it interesting. Gautama, Maya's husband, invokes Freud to analyze the latter state of mind as a father fixation. It is no wonder that the novel is often interpreted on these terms, the terms of Freud's psychopathology. Anita Desai's view of the human personality is influenced by Freud insofar as her characters are impelled by unconscious purposes, but she explores the unconscious in terms of instincts, impulses and desires that are not necessarily mental fixations of the Freudian caste. Desai presents the conflicts between two individuals or between an individual and his family or society, or between the rural and urban ways of life. But she does not present the struggle between id and ego in an individual as Freud does. By showing the non-dialectical nature of the unconscious and the conscious, as well as the opposition outside the individual, Anita Desai points out the external rationality that could be mere pseudo-enlightenment, like that of Gautama's. Maya represents the elusive nature of existence, an embodiment of the unconscious that impels one to live, but live on one's own terms of satisfaction, and anyone who obstructs the illusions is bound to suffer. Like Gautama, Maya, like the other female protagonists in Desai's novels, is an embodiment of the primal passion for life in spite of its wretchedness. It is not that Desai depicts the men as having lost their love for life, but they, like Gautama, have a paradoxically disinterested interest in life. Anita Desai projects the unconscious as being capable of fitting out the individuals with just as many illusions as they need in order to support life, and also to leave over enough to bring in a love for life and a freshness for life's tasks, thus softening the misery and pain of existence. Individuals are invested with a will to exist, and illusion provides the veils of meaning to an otherwise miserable life. Maya and Gautama do not represent two distinct principles. They may be seen as two sides of the same picture. Anita Desai expresses her views on the skill of writing. She says, "My temperament and circumstances have combined to give me the shelter, privacy, and solitude required for the writing of such novels, thereby avoiding problems that a more objective writer has to deal with, since he or she depends on observation rather than a private vision." Her vision and technique enrich the novel and lift it above the mere narration of a story or depiction of a character, and provide it with the very life and soul. The novel may also be looked at purely from the point of view of psychology. The essence of the novel's development is to be found in Maya's neurosis. Out of this arises an encounter of the self and the world outside. Maya's fear is the fear of death that ultimately leads to death itself, the destruction of life. Since fear of death is also the fear of the unknown, the reflective emotional awareness of it is brilliantly dramatized in the story. Psychoanalysts have clearly established that unhealthy upbringing at home, overindulgence, dominance, submissiveness, or negligence on part of the parents, loss of father or mother or both during infancy or childhood, and dysfunctional relationships among members of a family, all these may be the cardinal causes of conflicts in children and adults. Maya's story could make one think about the importance of human relationships and the need for sensitivity towards others, as well as the unhealthy consequences of being totally wrapped up in oneself, like Maya. A review in the Times Literary Supplement, London, aptly sums up the response of the average reader. Maya's extreme sensitivity never alienates the reader because it is rendered in terms of measurable human loneliness. How well Desai does in the business of carrying her narrative through to a satisfactory, even explosive end. Desai's understanding of the psychosomatic frailties of women is as top rated as her brisk and elegant prose, which not only enables her to provide a detailed consideration of the pervading influences of patriarchy, but also adds a tinge of brilliance to what would have otherwise been a boring account of the uncertainties that beset the human mind. Cry the Peacock may also be seen from the metaphysical perspective. It highlights the fact that pain or pleasure have no reality but exist only to the extent that they are felt by the individual. However, it is human tendency to desire pleasure, avoid pain. Most of us, like Maya, wish that the life we live should be beautiful. But unlike Maya, we are aware of the trap, even as we are willing to be its victim, and hence we do not go to the extremes. Through this difference, Anita Desai perhaps seeks to urge the reader to avoid being lured by the Maya or the illusion of the sensual world. She attempts to clarify what life distorts. I hope a study of this novel, Cry the Peacock, has enhanced your understanding of the human mind. I hope you've enjoyed the session. Thank you.